In case you missed our last episode of Life with the Polites MRL, Marriage, Relationships, and Love, here's what you missed. And when we can take the opportunity to be so drawn into a relationship that we cannot realize, we cannot identify the obvious. We can't identify the damage that one is bringing to us. We can't identify the hurt that one is really administering to us. We can't identify the harsh words. These are certain things that are so obvious, but being drawn in emotionally plays a tremendous role of not allowing us to see, not allowing us to feel, and not allowing us to step back for a moment and really scan the playing field, if I can say, of what really is going on in a relationship. We spoke about these six signs that we wanted to talk about that was very high level. We said that if you have a partner that displays a control complex, and we talked about what that truly means, having a control complex. That means that we're having a partner that doesn't see you as equal. I want you to think about that. You're having a partner that does not see you as equal. And we truly believe that everyone's equal in a relationship. Everyone is equal. We talked about if you have a partner that lives in being manipulative. And what do I mean by that? He or she manipulates everything, accuses the others of being paranoid. And they do that just to keep your mind off of their dishonest motives on things of which they are doing that would affect or bring to light what shouldn't be happening in a relationship. We also spoke about having a partner that always threatens to break up. It's a camouflage. Having someone that's always threatening to break up. This is the type of person that use threats as a way to get the other partner in line, to get the other partner in a way to bend towards their liking, their doing, their desires. This is a matter of way in which one tries to influence, because I would say influence in regards of not wanting or threatening not to be with you. These are highly visible signs that I think is very prudent as you go along in identifying a toxic relationship. We also talk about having a partner that truly has anger problems. And what do I mean by that? Those that fly off the handle at any time's moment. They promote a very unhealthy environment because of not knowing that when things don't go their way or things are said that they disagree with, that their anger arises. You know, it brings you to it makes you feel that everything you say has to be watered down because of the explosiveness that this individual brings. We spoke about having a partner that often loses friends and relationships. Often. And they do that simply because they have constantly burnt a lot of bridges in regards of relationships. Friends, siblings, work relationships, they have constantly torched relationships from their past because it's either their way or no way. They've lost friends. They've just detached themselves from their family simply because of the mantra of the must of having their way, having the last word, seeing things only their way. And finally, we spoke of having a partner that avoids conflict. And this is huge in relationships, because what we're saying is that a person that avoids conflict is not interested in listening. And listening is vital to relationships. Listening is vital to relationships. This is the type of person that they only engage in communications unless it's positive. And the positiveness has to surround around them. If these highly visible signs, if you find yourself in these, then you are in a toxic relationship. We also brought to the table that understanding that the word toxic is surrounded around the word poison. The word toxic surrounds itself by the word poison. And we have to understand that poison is a destroyer of life. Poison brings upon weakening and harmful health activities. So again, it gives us the analogy that we need to step back when we're so close to see these types of faulty behaviors that comes at us full speed. And we can't just turn it off. We can't just avoid it. We can't just flat out avoid it. We have to recognize the signs. And like I said earlier, we said this last Sunday, there are many of them that truly dominate a relationship if it's not brought to light.
Can you elaborate on avoid conflicts? Because I think when people hear that, I think in life you want to avoid conflicts. So can you give an example just so that the audience can understand what you mean by avoiding conflict? Because I'm quite sure no one wants to always be conflicting. So I wasn't sure if you meant conflict or confrontation. So can you just kind of explain the conflict?
Sure. In a relationship, it takes two people to have effective communication. It takes a means for one being able to stress, good or bad, things that have brought them to a place to where it has to be talked about. Okay? It has to be discussed. We have to be open to learn how to listen, but we have to be willingness to hear why listening is so important. But to get back to what you're saying, we have a lot of people at times that I truly believe that avoids the confrontation of listening or the willingness of not wanting to listen simply because they do not and am not interested in listening to truth.
So really they're avoiding communication because that communication, if it's not what they want to hear, is what will bring the conflict. So
I agree.
So they're really avoiding communication.
I agree.
Because I think I understood what you were saying, but I just didn't want the audience to I just wanted to get a little bit more clarity on that.
But
so they're really avoiding communication.
You're absolutely right.
And they're avoiding communication because that communication would cause conflict in their agenda. It avoid a conflict in
that's right.
In them complying. It avoid
that's right.
It avoid
that's right.
them from cohabitating or living with other people and again, and this is not just for the relationship, meaning boyfriend and girlfriend or husband and wife. This is also with parents and children. Okay, people don't want to communicate because they don't want to hear what the other person have to say because they have already drawn a picture in their mind. They have already accepted their truth,
exactly,
and not everybody else's truth. They have become their own God. They have become their own God. And when you have someone that feels they don't have to communicate, and that's why you have all this, the screaming, the hollering, the whatever, yeah, it's dangerous. It's dangerous.
You know what, Lady P, as you were speaking, and you're dead on. I wrote down they avoid communication, they avoid conflict because what you're doing is this addresses the need of having a meeting of the mind. And a meeting of the mind addresses things that has to be talked about.
Yeah, this particular person that we're speaking of, persons, okay, because it's they avoid the communication because first of all, like I said, there is no communication, because even when you try to communicate, they're the only ones doing the talking. And so how they avoid the communication, that's why you said they holler, they scream, they won't even, I mean, it comes to the point to where they don't even talk to you face to face. They'll pick up the phone and holler and scream, blah, blah, blah. It's dangerous. It's dangerous. That's why I had to step away, because you come to the point to where you either you either stay around that person, or you move yourself from the equation.
That's right. You get to the point as we move in this area, and I think you will agree that you have to have a way of communicating. You have to, whether it's a toxic relationship or not. But to go back to what you said, if I am not interested in listening to you in regards of what you're revealing to me, because I've made my own truth, then I fall right in this realm of what we're talking about, because I'm not interested in hearing that. And that's a very prominent issue in regards of relationships. And in this particular topic of toxic relationships, it's a way of avoiding and not being exposed of some of this faulty behavior that we're talking about. We said last Sunday that breaking this cycle of having a toxic relationship demands a couple of things. It demands closure, and it demands a willingness. You go back to the example that you just said. It demands those two things for it to move on. You have to have a closure to this unhealthy behavior. You have to have the willingness. You have to have a readiness to help heal the hurt that has been brought upon the other person. That's how you connect the closure. That's how you connect the willingness. But we have to be very honest that this is something that has to be addressed if this is what a person is seeking or going after. Because if someone is seeking change, in a toxic relationship, that person that's seeking the change, he or she too have to be prepared for those two things. They too, that's seeking this particular type of change, they too have to be prepared for closure. So what do I mean by closure? They have to be prepared to forgive. And they have to have the willingness. They got to have the readiness to be open again. If this is the type of reconciliation that these two individuals are seeking to have, by no means is this an easy lift. This is an enormous lift. But that person that seeks this, it's very important that this person that seeks this has to do something. This person that seeks this has to accept some of the chapters of their lives that have been damaged. If someone is seeking this type of reconciliation in regards of a toxic relationship, the person that's seeking this, they have to be willing to accept that some of the chapters, some of the damaged chapters in their lives are there. And they have to be ready to open a new chapter with this person to move on. That's no massage job. That's just keeping it real. That person that wants to bring this together, that wants to have this particular type of reconciliation, they have to be willing to accept that some of the chapters in their lives, damaged as they may, will have to be in the rearview mirror. And they have to be ready and open for a new chapter to move on with this person. By no means is this an easy lift. And that's where Lady P and I dropped off last Sunday. So we pick up where we are in part 2 of Toxic Relationship, discussing the breakaway. I used that term several times last Sunday, the breakaway. And what the breakaway means in regards to a toxic relationship. The breakaway comes about when one partner that's involved stop believing that the relationship is in the best of their interests. That's the breakaway. They have came to a point in their lives that through it all the past hurt, all the past damage, that right now they've made a constant decision that they're going to stop believing and they're not holding this relationship hostage anymore. They have stopped believing that this particular relationship is not best in their interests. There's been enough of pain. There's been too much damage. There's been too much hurt. And right now, the breakaway breaks that. The breakaway breaks that. The breakaway turns the pain into power. That's what the breakaway does. The breakaway turns the pain into power. This particular individual, they don't want change. They're ready to stand up for themselves. They don't want change. They are ready to stand up for themselves. They're ready to let go and walk away. Walk away from which no longer serves them, which no longer supports them, that no longer grows them, and no longer makes them happy. By no means is this easy. When one is ready for a breakaway,
So you're talking about the victim right now who's breaking away, not the one who's inflicting.
Right, exactly. Pain. Exactly. The one that's made a constant decision to break away and overcome a toxic relationship, this is what's happened. They have come to grip with dealing with the denial. They've come to grip with dealing with the denial that this is not happening to me. This is happening to me. And they're standing up for themselves. They have came and gripped the fact that they're going to deal with this denial and not flat out avoid that this pain, that this hurt, that this suffering is not taking place and have not taken place. They have gotten to the point that they're going to meet head on and not deny it, not live in a denial state of mind, and stand up and be ready to confront. I'm going to get to that word very soon. Confront the issues of why the breakaway is so important.
Can I jump in there? I don't know. I'm listening to your terminology, and I think it's not just, I think in the beginning with people, it may be denial, but when you have hung in there with the individual, knowing that the toxic behavior exists, I think it's the breakaway part. It's not just it's facing the denial. I think it's the fact that you have come to the point of realizing that you loving this person is not more than you loving yourself.
And I agree. A lot of the breakaway, and just for a little clarification, and I'm going to give this back to you because I think you made a very valid point. A lot of the breakaway forms from people that refuse to see the visible signs that's hurting them. But what you just said made a huge pathway on another part of the relationship. So when you get to this point, if you will, that's an emotional detachment that this person no longer wants to feel. Would you agree? Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is a part of the relationship that an individual has come to, that it does not fit in the best interests of themselves
and everybody around them.
So there's a decision
and everybody around them.
So there's a decision there that has to be made. We're talking about the breakaway. The breakaway is a point to where not just the individual have come to the point that they're going to deal with their denial, but they've also made a conscious decision that the relationship is not in their best interest. They've came to the point that this is an unhealthy relationship. That's what it draws down to. They're ready to confront the issues because it goes back to what you said earlier about communication. They're ready to confront the issues. They're ready, listen to me, to face and resolve what's hurting their heart, because that's what's got you there. When your heart hurts for a duration of time, when you've been exploded over periods of time of being there for someone, hanging in there for someone, and you finally realize, you finally opened up to realize that this type of relationship is a toxic relationship, and you've realized that this is an unhealthy relationship, you have to confront the issues. You have to be ready to face and resolve what's hurting your heart. You have to be willing on doing that. The breakaway from a toxic relationship surrounds those three things. It surrounds dealing with the denial, accepting the obvious that the relationship is not in your best interest. And believe it or not, it takes a period of time for a lot of people to get to that point. Because in a lot of relationships, some people only see what they want to see. And I said earlier, a lot of the signs that we spoke last Sunday and I just went over, in my opinion, what I said are very obvious. But we have a lot of people, men and women, that are so emotionally drawn in to the relationship. When you are so emotionally drawn in, then there is a capability that you're not discerning, and what these signs are doing, you are just straight up, flat out avoiding them because you are so drawn in emotionally. The breakaway also deals with confronting the issues. What I mean when I talk about confronting the issues, I'm talking about refusing to be manipulated. That's what I'm talking about. When you come to the point in a relationship that this is a toxic relationship and you're ready to break away, you're ready to heal from what's hurting your heart, the person that you're in the midst of separating from, and I'm going to get to this real soon, you have to be willing on standing up for yourself and refuse to be manipulated, bullied, or fall to what I call the blame game. Don't fall for the blame game. Don't allow yourself to be bullied, and refuse to be manipulated, because there's reasons behind this attack. We have to also understand that that's part of these three. We have to face and resolve within ourselves the importance of being better. better. So what did I mean by that, being better? I'm talking about being better, having better, and being treated better. You have to come to that point. You have to face and resolve within yourself. That's knowing your value. That's knowing your worth. That's knowing the importance of better. And being better means having better and being treated better. Those are the three things that, when confronted in regards of overcoming and breaking away from a toxic relationship, that's huge. There is no getting around that. There is no getting around standing up for yourself and recognizing that you have hurt long enough. But in many cases, from what the studies that we've read, but in many cases, the mental and the emotional release. I'm going to say that again. In many cases, the mental and emotional release from these types of relationships is a process. So what does that mean? It's going to take some time. This type of release does not happen overnight. There's a detachment, but you have to understand the words that I'm using. Mental and emotional. You didn't arrive in this type of relationship overnight. So you're not going to break away from this type of relationship overnight. There is a mental and an emotional release. There is a time span. There are seasons that the process of weaning yourself off is going to get you to go to where you have to go to find out and find you and find that better that I'm talking about. Finding that better is what's going to promote you in the time of the processing of separating yourself. Because as you understand and confront the issues that have been hurting you, something you have to keep in mind, that the other person is not going to get it, that these are the issues and that he or she is the issue. Mm-hmm. They're not going to get that. They're not going to understand that you've came to the point in the relationship that the relationship does not benefit you in your best interest. They're not going to understand or want the desire to listen to confront the issues. They're not going to identify with you wanting to face and resolve that you want better, because they don't see themselves as the issue. It goes back to what I said before, that a lot of this from studies comes from what a lot of people have watched, learned, and seen from their parents growing up. And they now, as an adult, do not recognize the same type of faulty behaviors that they saw their parents describe and live through their doing. They don't accept that they're the same, out of the same mold. So when you come to the point that you're ready to break away from this hurt and confront the issues and try to resolve and face what's hurting you, they're not going to open up and say, it's on me. They're not, because they're not looking at it as them being the issue. You're the issue. You're the issue. They don't realize or identify that the issues are the problems that they have brought and manifested. So what am I saying? When you get to this point in the breakaway, you got to be ready, because the other person is going to try to manipulate you. The other person is going to try to bully you. And the other person is going to want to confront you with the blame game, because they don't recognize that they're the issue.
And let's go even a little further. The other person's going to try to literally destroy you.
That too.
When you're trying to break away.
Especially because
you and everything else around you that you love, they're going to try to destroy you. And it's because they no longer have that control. They no longer have that, and I guess control is the only word that I can use right now. They no longer have grip of the situation. They can no longer manipulate. And so you become the bad party. And they let everybody know that you're the problem. You understand what I'm saying?
It goes back to what I said.
They make everybody think that you're the problem, when in reality they have not looked at themselves. And it's just sad that as they are having others that you love dearly look at you as the problem, it's just, I'm going to just give it back to you.
Well, you mentioned a great point.
I'm going to just give it back to you.
Anytime you're in this type of relationship and the person that's administering this type of damage, this type of hurt, when there is a sense that they're losing control, it's a point to where they're not going to let it go easily. And that's what I'm saying. You have to be ready for that. They're going down swinging simply because they understand the value that you have.
The value you brought to them.
But
The value
you're
you
absolutely
brought
right.
to them.
You're
The
absolutely
love
right.
and everything,
You're
the
absolutely
value
right.
you brought to them.
You're absolutely
So if
right.
they lose you, they don't have that because they never had it in the very beginning. They were too weak to do and to be and to have and to gain, and to love. They were too weak to do it. So their whole value came from you. Their whole lifestyle came from you. And so when you, as the person who has been the victim, now begins to fight back. And yes, it seems like as if you're just like them now, but you're fighting back. Why? Because you're valuing who you are. They don't value who you are. They just want what you have. But they don't value who you are. They never really loved you, because if they did, they would know how to sit down and communicate. But whenever there's no communication in a relationship, that right there lets you know that they never value who you are. They just want what you have. They just want you to bring value to their life, because they're confused, they're bitter, they're angry, and don't care to why they are. You understand what I'm saying? So it does become a very difficult thing for the person who has endured this, the person on the other hand who has endured this, because they had loved that person for so long, hoping and praying and having the faith that, as people get older and mature, they see the light. You know what I'm saying? Even that picture, I said, come to the light, Carol Ann, some people don't want to come to the light. They don't want to come to the light. They just want to continue to live their life off of your values, because they have none. And they have no value.
That's very true. That's very true.
These people have no value. Their value is taking what they can take, destroying when they can't take no more, and just not caring and hurting. That the enemy uses them so well to kill, steal, and destroy. And so if you're not careful, no matter who this is, this can be your significant other, this can be your mother, this can be your father, your sister, your brother, your child.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have no values. And that's why they walk around destroying everything that comes around them that's good, because they have no value. They need to get to the root of their bitterness. They're bitter. And so what happens is that you're trying to love them after a while, but as you're trying to break away, you're finding yourself, taking on certain these characteristics that you yourself are not like, but you're fighting. You're fighting so that you can be the person that you need to be again.
Mm-hmm.
Because all along, it's just a true thing that when you're around, they say be careful what you're around, because after a while you will begin to behave that way. And not that you behave that way with everybody, but with that particular person, it becomes to where you will become just like them, because you're constantly fighting.
Mm-hmm.
There's no communication, so now you're constantly fighting. Until you get to the point, like you said, that it's a breakaway, because you find out, hey, you know what? This is not healthy. This is not healthy. This is not who you are. It's never been who you are. You're just trying to, you've been in it so long. That's what you've been in it so long. Now you're fighting. And so now everybody looking at you like, well, you just like the person. No, you've been in it so long that you're fighting.
Mm-hmm.
You have no choice but to fight.
Mm-hmm.
So you're fighting as you're coming out of it, and you're fighting, at the end of the break, just before you get to the breakaway, you're fighting as you're coming to the breakaway, and then you're gonna fight some more as you're going through the breakaway.
You ask yourself, when is enough enough?
Exactly.
And it's something very keen in what you just said, but when you get to that
I think
point,
you said it, but go ahead.
But when you get to that point, you have to understand that the person that you've now decided to stand up against, 3 things they're not going to just allow you to walk away from. They've been very comfortable having control. They've been very comfortable in taking, not giving, taking and receiving. And they now feel threatened by you now wanting to break away, they're going to feel weakened by you leaving. So when I say that when this discussion comes about with you dealing with this relationship is no longer in my best interest, where you are now confronting the issues, you're standing up for yourself, and you're ready to face and resolve what has got you there, you must be ready for the manipulation. You have to be ready for the bullying or the it's not my fault. You have to be ready for being the bully and the one that has a very aggressive posture, that when this particular relationship becomes so futile, that you have to understand what lies ahead of you. You have to understand what domination looks like, because people in this type of toxic environment displays domination, and what they're not used to is them not being dominated. They're not used to you reversing the field and you now being aggressive, because now you're confronting the issues. Now you want to face and resolve the things that have been hurting your heart. Now you're ready to stand, and you've decided that, you know what, this relationship is not the best in the best interest for me. That particular type of domination or aggressive behavior now is flipped. But you have to be ready. You have to be ready, because this type of power that's no longer being obtained, they use words. They use their fists. They use lies. They use fear. And all they want to remain over you, and they will stop whatever it takes to achieve that.
You know, I want to go back to that word value, because when you said that, I think that's really the key to this individual within whomever relationship. Anyone that does not have any values is not stable. And I want you to think about what I'm saying. You know, anytime you see someone who's not stable in their life, is because they have no values. So I'm going to say it the opposite way. They come in and they going. There's no stability. Because they have no values.
I agree.
Where you have values, you are stable.
I agree. I agree with that statement.
Where you have values, you are stable. So if a person values a relationship, they are stable in that relationship, which is why they're able to communicate and so forth. So I think that's something that we need to look for in people. If they always rampant and raging, and that's what I just keep hearing. Where a person who is not stable in their life, is because they have no values. And so if they're not stable, they bring instability in anybody else's life, because they have no values.
So the connection is, and I want to hold that real firm, could that be one of the things that those that have this instability wants to hang on and not let go?
Yeah, they want to hang on because they're hanging on to where there is stability. Like you said, they're hanging on to those who have what they don't have. And it's sad. It's really sad. They hang on to what they want, but they themselves are so hollow and so empty and so big they don't know how to. So what they have to do is they have to deal with that hollow and that bitterness and that emptiness in order to become stable in their lives. But they're very hollow, empty people. Nothing holds with them. Nothing. Because they have their own truths. And they have their own truth only because there's a deep bitterness that they choose not to deal with. As you said, they play the blame game. So if you play in the blame game all your life, how can you be stable in anything?
That's true.
How can you have a value anyway if you're playing the blame game to everything? That's why you're not stable. So you point the finger at everybody else, not realizing that if you just take a moment and look at you for a second and realize why you're behaving in this certain type of toxic behavior, only then can you then build some value within you.
One of the challenges that a lot of people have in toxic relationship is they have to identify that there are faulty behaviors. And they have to recognize it and they got to own it. They got to recognize it and they got to own it. It doesn't bring no one any good in a relationship if you don't recognize your own faulty behaviors. If everything is about you becoming a blamer is a person that never admits to blame. There is no, I got that. That's on me. If you are committed to only being a blamer and withhold responsibility because everything surrounds you, then you don't recognize your own faulty behavior. It's always the other person's fault. That's what I'm saying. You haven't come to the fullness of seeing, you know what? I don't have all my ducks in a row. But but again, when someone has made a conscious decision that a toxic relationship is not in my interest, that individual is going to stand up for him or herself. They're going to confront the issues. They're going to face and resolve what's hurting their heart, and they have prepared to move on. And what's there that faces them now is the repercussion of the other person that now sees their back. Because when someone turns their back, that means that they're walking away from you. They've endured the pain, they've endured the hurt, they've endured the damages, and they're no longer going to be willing to conflict to your way or your approach to life. That's what the breakaway is all about. The breakaway from a toxic relationship is understanding that, you know what, this relationship does not provide, is not better for, it doesn't provide the interest needed for me to grow and sustain myself. And a relationship in this form and in this manner has to be able, like any positive relationship or healthy relationship, it has to provide fruits. There is no fruits in a toxic relationship. There is none. There is no fruits. You know, you got to look at, you have to look at when you've turned your back and you've understand that what's best for you and what's best in the interest of your relationship, that those individuals that are seeing you walk away, they're not looking at it as their fault. Because their whole aim is not to allow your pain to turn into power. You see, when you break away from a toxic relationship, you turn your pain into power. That enables you to walk away. But a person that wants to keep you in a toxic relationship, they don't want your pain to turn into power.
You know what is just so, I don't know what word I want to use, but it's obvious to the person who's been the victim that when they begin to obtain their power, how can I say this? Whichever, it's two ways a person like this will regain their power. You begin to try to gain your power. Let's say if you try to gain your power first while you were still in it before you completely broke away. And before you completely break away, you begin to deal with that person in a manner that they are dealing with you. And what do I mean by that? Because when you start dishing to them back what they've been dishing to you, they can't. They look at you like you crazy, but they never look at the fact that they were crazy when they were dishing it to you.
It goes back to what I said.
You follow what I'm saying?
They don't identify their own faulty behavior.
So when you do finally do the breakaway and really gain your power, you still have to find yourself figuring out how to deal with it now that you got your power. You say enough is enough. Mm-hmm. Because if you choose to be, if you go back to that meek person, they still see it as weakness, mm-hmm. and they coming for you still. Mm-hmm. If you gain your power back and you gain in a way where you, and I don't want to use the word retaliation, but I'm gonna say stand firm, mm-hmm. for who you are. Mm-hmm. That part you have to be careful, because the other person can become very abrupt, mm-hmm. and very abusive. Mm-hmm. No more verbally, mm-hmm. but physically. Mm-hmm. You follow what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I guess the point that I'm trying to nail here is that once you decided you do the breakaway to gain your power back, to gain your self-esteem back, to gain your values back, and becoming to just being who you are again, because trust me, you have gone through quite a bit before you actually decide to break away. That's because right. When you love somebody, you love, especially you was in this relationship for quite some time. So when you're breaking away, whichever way you're choosing to be, that you're behaving now, whether you're going back to that meek person because you're tired of the arguing, whatever it be, or you becoming the very strong and firm, either way is going to get a reaction for a while. Mm-hmm. And you got to be prepared for that. Exactly. Because that other individual is not going to let go that easy. Because like I said, you brought value to them. And the real them is going to be revealed to everybody else once you pull out of the picture. But by every opportunity, and the reason why the breakaway is not easy, because sometimes if it is a marriage, there's things that y'all have to, you have to still probably communicate. You probably still going through, you're gonna have to go through a divorce, or you got to separate things. And so while you're going through all of that stuff, there's still going to be some confrontation. Mm-hmm. And how you deal with that confrontation is going to deliver to that person who you are right now, mm-hmm. or who they think they can still have you to mm-hmm. become. Mm-hmm. You follow what I'm saying?
I do.
So it's like you damned if you do and you damned if you don't. But eventually, there is hope at the end of the tunnel. That's all I can say. And it depends on how that person who's been a victim for so long deals with that situation. It's not easy.
No, it's not easy. And we're almost up to the clock, but I'll say this. I want to circle back around real quickly to what you said. But there's two positives that comes out on the breakaway of a toxic relationship, overcoming a relationship. And both sides get to deal with it. In my opinion, this is the rubber that meets the road. That when you break away from a toxic relationship, when you're seeing yourself overcoming this type of relationship, this also means for the one that's initiated that you are already willing to accept that it's going to hurt. And the person that you're breaking away, when the breakaway finally happens, that person has to deal with the separation and the hurt. That's regardless whether or not he or she identifies their faulty behavior or not. Mm-hmm. That's the only part that really balances out. Because the individual that's made a decision that this relationship is not in my best interest, they've came to a point in their life that they're willing to accept that it's going to hurt. And on the flip side, the person that you've turned your back, the person that you're now have said, you know what, I've had enough of that, and their own miss, they have to deal with the hurt. The hurt that they failed to recognize by displaying, this type of faulty behavior. It's not easy. It's not easy. But what happens is that, and you went there, and I'm going to give this back to you if you can close. What happens is that the lessons learned when someone decides that they're going to break away from this type of relationship allows that person to receive that better that I spoke about earlier.
And that's where I was going to end, because I was going to say I didn't hear a scripture come out of what we've been talking about thus far, and that's where I was going to end. Mary and Martha, I think it was, when Jesus was in the home, and one was so busy cooking and doing just making sure everything is pretty nice, neat, ready, blah blah blah, whatever it may be. And the sister, she said, forget all that. Jesus is in the room. I'm going to sit at his feet. I'm going to listen, and I'm going to, receive,
Amen.
This I'm going to receive. I forget all this other stuff. You know what I'm saying? I may not get another opportunity. I'm paraphrasing.
That's right.
I'm just creating a situation here.
Right.
Jesus is in the place today.
Amen.
Okay? I'm not worried about all this other stuff that we would do when we're trying to host. Jesus is in the room and in the place today. That's where it is better for me to be there than for me to be doing what the normal things that a woman normally would do.
Amen.
And in that scenario, Jesus uses two words. What one sister did was good, but what the other sister did was better.
That's right. That's right.
The one that recognized that Jesus was in the room, and hey, this opportunity may not come yet. I'm going to sit at his feet. Now, unless Jesus himself say, hey, can you go cook something? But she chose to be in his very presence, because she saw the difference between what was good and what was better. And sometimes we have to come to a point in our lives where we know what is good and what is better. Yeah, she loved her sister. They may have loved what they do when people come and they host, and they love to cook, and they love to clean, and they love to host. But you know what? It comes a point where you're going to choose whether you're going to love what is good or love what is better.
That's right.
Because it was good for you to love this person, at that time and season. You hoped if some good is going to come out of that. But at the end of the day, you always got to do what is better for you.
That's right.
That's what we have to be very mindful of. Right. What is good and what is better. It is good for parents to love their children, but when them children get to a certain point and they starting to act like they crazy and for whatever reason, honey, it is better that parent didn't take their hands away and they deal with they focus on them. Or in a relationship, if you find that it was good that you loved your husband all this time, but he's being abusive or he's blah, 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 honey, it's going to come a time when you're going to know, it's better now, because see, all them years of good, it didn't change anything. It was good that you do it. Thank you, Jesus. Don't take nothing from, because you know what? God wants us to love people, but God does not want you to be beat up on. God doesn't, when you doing something that's good, some fruit's supposed to come out of it.
That's right.
So if your good is not bearing any fruit, then it's best that you do what is better than for you to let that go and start focusing on building yourself back up. So in life, we have to learn what is good and what is better. We have that right.
Amen.
And no one has a right to take away from you deciding what is good for you and what is better for you. Or as Barbara Streisand and Donna Summer would say, enough is enough. Enough is enough. And so when we come to that point of saying enough is enough, you have just said that this is better for me because this is not. This was not. Okay?
The breakaway.
And you're not upset about it.
No.
You're clear. And like you said, it will hurt, but you're clear. You're absolutely clear about, you know what? Because like you said the word earlier, the cycle will just keep going on and on and on.